Welcome to this module on leadership effectiveness. Leadership is foundational to any endeavor. It doesn't matter what kind of endeavor it is. It could be business, it could be a nonprofit, it could be a church or faith community, it could be a civic organization, a social movement. Any organization, leadership is key. It's foundational to the growth and the success of that organization. You show me an organization or a business that has been highly successful, I can always find a leader or a group of leaders who were key and central to making that happen. I like to say it this way: everything rises and falls on leadership. And as the owner of your business, you have to take 100% responsibility for the growth and effectiveness and success or the lack thereof in your business. And the key to seeing your business grow is to grow personally as a leader. Everything rises and falls on leadership. Don't forget that. One of my favorite movies of all times illustrates this very well. It's an old 1949 American classic entitled 12 O'Clock High. It's the story of an American bomber squadron during World War II. They were based in the European area, and this bomber squadron was led by a commander who was a very accomplished military man. He had earned a lot of recognitions, a lot of honors, and he led this squadron, but for whatever reason, this squadron started having problems. They started failing in their missions. They started missing targets. They started having breakdowns, mechanical breakdowns, morale breakdowns, planning breakdowns. Things were just starting to fall apart. And in this movie, there are two generals, an older general and a younger general. And the younger general was played by Gregory Peck, who was a very popular American actor. And Gregory Peck, this younger general, and the older general, who he reported to, were talking and discussing the problem with this particular squadron. And so the older general told Gregory Peck, the young general, I want you to go there, and I want you to spend some time with the commander. I want you to see the soldiers and talk to them. I want you to find out what's the problem. What's going on there? We've got to fix this because this is not going in a good direction. So Gregory Peck does as he's commanded, and he goes and he meets with the commander, who happens to be an old friend of his. In fact, this commander was a friend of the older general as well as Gregory Peck's in the movie. And so Gregory Peck talks to this commander, and he says, "What's going on?" And all the commander can say is, "We're having bad luck. We're having bad luck. Every day it just seems like things don't go our way. We don't get a break." And so Gregory Peck interviews some of the airmen and the soldiers and says, "What's going on?" And all anybody can say is they're having bad luck. And so before he leaves to give a report to the older general, Gregory Peck meets with the commander one last time and says, "We got to figure this out. What is the problem?" And the commander says to him, we just have bad luck." And Gregory Peck looks at him and says, "There's no such thing as luck. Everything has a cause and effect. We got to figure it out." And he leaves and he goes back to the older general, and he meets with the older general, and the older general's wanting to hear his report, and Gregory Peck is kind of hem-hawing and not really getting to the point. And finally, the older general gets a little frustrated with him and kind of slams his hand down on the table and says, "Tell me the truth. Give it to me with the bark on. I want to know the truth. What's the problem?" And Gregory Peck, the young general, he looks at the older general eye to eye, and he said, "Sir, it's leadership. The problem is leadership. It's the commander." And the older general goes into a rage. He says, "How can this be? You know that commander. I know this commander. He's earned all these honors and these medals." And the older general just has sort of a fit there, just raging and upset about what Gregory Peck has just said. And finally, after a few moments of rage, he calms down and he gets quiet and he looks at Gregory Peck and he points his finger at him and he says, "Are you sure? Are you sure the problem is leadership?" And Gregory Peck looks at at the older general, and he says, "Yes, sir, I'm sure. It's leadership. It's always leadership." And the older general pauses for a moment, and he says, "You are correct. Relieve the commander." And the story goes on. They relieve the commander, and the storyline continues to develop. But I like that part because it says so well what I'm trying to say in this particular module. Everything rises and falls on leadership. As a business owner, you must grow as a leader for your business to grow. Because if you don't grow in your leadership, your business is probably not going to grow. So this needs to be a central focus for you as the business owner. Now, I'm sure you've read and heard many different definitions of leadership, and we're going to talk about some of those in these training videos in this module. But I want you right now to think of leadership in terms of capacity. Leadership is about capacity. What is your capacity? We don't really know what our capacity is until we experience it. So if you've been able to grow your business, say, to annual revenues of $500,000, that tells me you have leadership capacity for a $500,000 business. Do you have leadership capacity for $1 million business? Well, maybe, maybe not. We don't know. And so you work toward that. But most of us discover sooner or later that we hit a lid. We hit like a ceiling. And John Maxwell talks about this concept in his book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And law number 1 is called the law of the lid. And he says every leader sooner or later hits that lid. We get to that place where we know we've maxed out as a leader. We've hit our capacity. Now, don't let that discourage you, because possibly you're there, or you feel like you're there today. The good news is you can raise your lid. You can do that by learning, by growing, by spending time in reflection, and by thinking and letting other people coach you and speak into your life. You can raise your leadership lid. He tells the wonderful story about the McDonald brothers in California when they started their restaurant chain. Actually, they wanted to have multiple locations. They wanted to franchise it, but they were not able to do it. They did marvelous things in terms of how they systematized the fast food industry and the fast food process, but they were ineffective when it came to being able to multiply their locations and franchise their business. A gentleman who served their restaurants was a man by the name of Ray Kroc. Ray had a higher leadership capacity, and he saw the potential, and he bought the rights to the McDonald's restaurant from the McDonald's brothers. And it was Ray Kroc who then took this franchise and turned it into probably today the largest franchise in the world. But it was because he had greater leadership capacity. Now, today, I want you to think about, what is your leadership capacity? What are you capable of? And start by saying, here's what I've achieved so far. And if you feel like you're struggling to grow to that next level, just think in terms of capacity and say, I've got to increase my capacity. And work on this module, work on the things we're going to talk about here so that you can increase that capacity, because if you don't grow as a leader, your business is not going to grow either. Now, John Maxwell says something else that's really important I want to share before we wrap up this session. He said, we get people in our companies and in our organizations who have leadership capacity as well. And sometimes we get people in our organizations who have greater leadership capacity than we do as the owner or the official leader. And that's great because we want to leverage their leadership capacity. But here's the key. If we aren't growing as the owner, and if our leadership lid is not going up, but theirs is higher than ours, they will not stay with us. They will not stay in our company or in our organization. They have got to see and know, and most of the time this is just intuitive. Most people don't know how to talk about it. but they've got to see and know that your leadership lid is growing and it's rising, so that will know they can work and grow themselves. So keep that in mind. It's very, very important. We're going to talk about tactical leadership and strategic leadership. We're going to get into this in a deeper way to help you increase your capacity.